Welcome to Gadgets for Families, the tech podcast for those of you that go on vacation to visit family and end up spending unexpected time on your second job, tech support for your family. And those of you that look forward to those visits so you can get your tech fixed. And then anyone else looking to get more out of their tech. Jason, that's not quite as cool as the butcher, the baker, and the popcorn maker, but hey, it's what I had this week. So
No, but it's realistic. That's our life experience. Every family member house we go to, every friend, everyone pulls out their phone or they point to their router or they point to their computer and say, "Hey, take care of this, please."
yep. Well, I'm Greg Cunningham. I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm your host, Jay Benjamin. Thank you all for joining us this week.
So yeah, I was traveling last week, which is why I came up with this. I actually wrote this while I was still traveling, and my uncle that lives with my grandma said, "You have got to make your grandma's computer go faster." And
Right.
she's got a pretty old 15-inch MacBook Pro. I mean, it's not the latest and greatest kind of thing, but I thought, okay, fine. So I actually loaded Clean My Mac X, which is
Okay.
what I use on mine, but
Right.
I didn't want to pay for it, so it wouldn't do what I wanted to do. So I took that off. Pro tip there: don't put on a utility that's going to pop up messages if your customer doesn't know what to do with the messages, and it's just going to cause anxiety. So I took it
Right.
off because it would have kept popping up messages saying, "Hey, if you get our full version, blah 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 blah," and she would have thought she had a virus. But anyway, so I ended up cleaning out her browser history. I don't think it had been done since she got that Mac several years ago.
Okay.
And so I asked my uncle, I said, "Here, let me load a website." And he says, "Oh, wow." So it must have been really, really, really bad.
Right.
So
Everything in
yeah,
there.
yep. And then I finally convinced her to put a real password on there. 1234 is not a great password. But she doesn't put a password on her iPhone because she just doesn't want to have to deal with that kind of stuff. But I finally
Right.
convinced her to do that because anybody that got in, she had like her banking password saved in
Hmm.
keychain. And so once you get in, right, you're
Right.
you're in.
You have access to everything.
So that was my tech support for this weekend. How about you? Did you have to do any?
Yeah. So my daughter, she broke her iPad and the screen was actually fine. It was around the bezel, right? That white space around the iPad, and it cracked really good. Like you can see inside through to the
Ooh,
back of the screen.
nice.
So we got that repaired. I repaired plenty of screens before, and part of the thing too when I was at Halliburton was recycling a lot of phones and stuff. So screen replacements, button replacements, things like that. I got into doing that. So we replaced the screen at a place called Experiment down here in Houston. I wanted a warranty and stuff like that. Plus, I didn't want to deal with the trouble myself, so got it fixed. And I said this may be a good time to do a clean restart. So erase all of those junk apps. Remember those games that just advertise other games, and you play the game for a minute, and then it advertises you another game, and she says, "Hey, I want to play that game," and she clicks on it. Got rid of all of the games, loaded some educational stuff, the Khan Academy one that you recommended back in like episode 2, um, and a few other educational apps and stuff. So we got her off to a clean start. We're going to try to shift her focus. It's not going to be a recreational device anymore. It's going to be a learning device. And she seems to be adjusting to it pretty good. She's still asking for the games, but the App Store is completely removed from her home screen. So no more installing apps all willy nilly. So,
Yeah, I don't know about you, but like I've done screen repair before. It's
yeah,
really not that big of a deal, especially on an
no,
iPad where you have the bigger surface to work with. You just get the
right.
kit from iFixit or whatever, wherever the case may be. But I'm at the point where it's like, do I really want to spend the time
Right,
doing that?
right. It took me weeks saying I'll get around to it. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next week. And yeah, it had been down for weeks. So yeah, I was
Yeah.
let me just go and fix it.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just pay the money and get it done.
Right.
So yeah. Well, this week might feel just a bit different. I already warned Jason about this because the agenda, the show outline looks very different than what he saw last night when he was putting some of his stuff in.
Right.
So instead of following our normal flow, I took all the items we wanted to talk about and just laid them out. Now, we're still going to have some current stuff, including what's coming in the latest OS updates, which are iOS, watchOS, macOS, everything. Those updates actually might drop while we record, Jason. So I expect them
Right.
today. So we'll go through what's in there. I want to do a follow up on me going caseless. Um, I was camping this last weekend, so I want to talk about MagSafe and how I'm managing the battery. Remember that anxiety I was having about the 80% limit and if it would get me through a day on the weekend? Well, I'm not the
Right.
only one. ATP, Casey Liss, not caseless, Casey Liss had the same anxiety. So talk about what I'm doing there. And then we've got some tips. And then, Jason, I want to go back to our discussion on the iPad lineup and the
Right.
confusion there, because it's actually come up on the two tech podcasts I listen to every single week. Both of them have talked about the
Hmm.
confusion in the iPad lineup. And today, when I was listening to Upgrade, they were also talking about the Mac rumors and how the Mac lineup has some of that confusion. So,
Right.
I'm in the market for a new device soon ish,
Soon.
right?
Yep.
And so it's starting to give me some anxiety, Jason, about what I'm going to purchase.
Right.
So I want to talk through that. So that might be like our core topic that'll come later. So we'll tie those things together and see if Jason can talk me down off the ledge.
Right.
And then in the post show, I want to have a discussion about folding phones. MKBHD did a video on one of the latest Android folding phones, and I got to admit, it looked really sweet. So I want to see what Jason's thoughts are on
Hmm.
that concept. And there was a rumor that came out that said they're working on a folding iPad first, not a folding phone, but a folding iPad. So
Okay.
I want to talk about this concept of folding devices. And then there was an article that came out about teenagers wanting to be tracked. I know that sounds really funny, but wanting to be tracked. And
Yeah.
then I want to, and maybe some discussion on migrating password managers. So those are the three things: the folding stuff, the tracking other people, and migrating password managers. That's the kind of stuff I
Hmm.
want to tackle in today's post show. So, how's
Right.
that sound?
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds good. I when you sent the article about the teenagers wanting to be tracked, it just reminded me of something that that happens every week. Every well, to I see this a lot, and it makes sense that that number is so high. So no, definitely looking forward to talking to that, talking
Right.
through that. So
Yeah. So if it seems like we're going all over the place, I want to remind everybody that in our show notes we put out the segments and the timestamp. So
right.
if you either scroll to the right or scroll down, depending on which podcast player you're using, then you can at least see the timestamps. And if you're in Overcast, for example, or if you're listening to this on our Captivate site, which is where we host the podcast, you'll be able to actually click on the links and go straight to that timestamp. So if
Hmm.
something doesn't interest you, go ahead and skip around. So the important
Yeah.
thing is that you get something useful out of today. So
Hmm.
now, before I start, don't forget to do all the things. We've got a lot going up on the YouTube channel. I'm going to put the first thing we're going to talk about as an update on me going caseless, and I'm going to put up a short probably tomorrow or the day after on that, and you'll understand why here in a minute. And but check out the YouTube channel. All of this stuff is in the show notes. Anytime you follow, subscribe, like, share, view the YouTube video, or even just listen to the podcast, all of that helps us grow the show and helps us
Hmm.
understand where we're at. So, yes, I'd love to be able to say we're going to do this forever, no matter what, if we only have 3 people that listen to us. But that's just not the reality of life, right? Jason nor I are
Right.
retired. And I don't know that I'll ever retire, but,
Same
you
here.
know, something. So, yeah, do all those things. Help us get the word out on the show.
Yeah.
All right. So, Jason, you're still caseless, right? You had to
I
replace
am.
the you had to replace the back screen protector on your phone, right?
Right. And the front screen protector. So it did take a small little drop at a market I was at. The wind was blowing, rocking the tent. Took a small drop, scuffed the corner just a little bit. It I feel the scuff, but I don't see the scuff. But it dropped enough to crack the edges of the screen protector on the front. So I replaced the front and the back.
Okay. So we left for camping on Thursday,
Hmm.
and I get home yesterday. So 4 days of camping, everything was great. I didn't always have the case on. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. It just depended on what I was doing, right?
Right.
So yesterday I get home and I don't have the case on anymore. And I sit down at the stool at the kitchen counter
Hmm.
and I had a pair of sweats on and my phone was in my pocket. And the next thing I hear is this thunk, like this
Yeah.
super loud thunk. My phone slid out of my pocket and fell. It was about three and a
Yeah.
half feet, right onto the tile.
Okay.
So it's a tile floor. It's not linoleum. It's
Okay. That's what I was
real
wondering
tile.
how hard the floor was. It's real tile.
And I was like, and my wife was in the laundry room and she's like, what was that? And I'm like,
Oh,
my
she heard
phone.
it.
Yeah. So I grab it, and I start looking, and all is good except for the front screen protector.
Okay.
So it had a crack or it had a chip out of it, and then within a couple of minutes, right, I could if I tilted the phone right, I could see the line spidering
Yeah.
clear across it, right, all that kind of stuff. But I did the thing because I've heard people dropping these and they get little dents or little bends in the titanium. So I ran my finger around all the titanium on the edge to make sure there weren't any sharp spots or anything that I was missing. And
Hmm.
all of that was good. And it landed on the power button side, on the
Okay.
front edge of that side. That's where it hit because I could see scuffs basically all the way up the screen protector right along that
Yeah.
edge.
Uh,
So that's where it hit. So that's the video I'll drop. Before I swapped the screen protector, because you know me, that would never last on that screen protector. There was no way.
right. Did you have
So,
any with you on the
well, I
trip?
was here. I was home. I had
Okay.
gotten
Okay.
home. Yeah. So I had got, no, that would have been a tragedy if I had
Right.
been done this camping. So, no,
No,
I
no.
hurried
Put
last
some in the
night.
camper. Put some
Yeah.
spares in
Yeah.
the camper. Yeah.
I might have to. So I hurried and did a quick video, showed what it looked like. The production quality on the video won't be great, but and then I peeled off the screen protector on camera. So I didn't know if it had cracked the screen underneath, and it
Right.
hadn't. So I'll drop that video, everybody be able to see. So, but this is why when I go caseless, actually, this is why I use screen protectors, period.
Right.
End of
Even
story.
even going on caseless.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah, so I peeled the screen protector off. All was good. I also took advantage of it and peeled the camera protector off because it's the original one I put on, and I had taken it on
Hmm.
and off a couple of times, and I could see a little bit of stuff underneath it, not right over the lens, but underneath one of the things. And plus, I
Right.
didn't know how well it was going to stay sticky since I had taken it on and off a couple of times. So yeah, so I replaced both of those, and the with Alien or however you say that, right? The way they've got the guide to put it on, and
Hmm.
it just went on. I've got no bubbles. I've got
Yeah.
no dust specks underneath it. So I'm
Right.
back. I'm still caseless, and even dropping it like that, I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I knew 3 feet. You know, I know the phone is tougher than that, but it sounded like it had enough velocity to really, it cracked the screen protector. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm glad it didn't do any damage. But even as tough as they make these phones, if it hits at the right angle or just the right amount of pressure or something, it can really do some damage. No matter how tough the glass is, the titanium case or whatever, it can really do some damage. So, no, good deal. I look forward to that video.
Yeah, I'll drop it. Like I said, the production quality won't be great, but yeah, I was a little freaked out. But and if you guys want to see because Jason and I are actually using the same brands of screen
Yeah.
protectors and stuff like that. So if you want to check that out, you can go to our website and check out the blog post that we put out on all the stuff that I upgraded to this year. Jason didn't do a lot of upgrading, so there's a blog
Yeah.
post on there, and there's some Amazon affiliate links in there that you can go to if you order them. Great, but at least you'll be able to see which ones we use. So I've been meaning to tell you this. Do you know that they actually make sapphire glass screen protectors now?
I figured there was some more high end ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm fine with the cheaper ones. Like I said, you get 3 or 4 of them in the pack, and
Yeah.
you have a little spill like we did, or like you did last week, and you just swap it out.
Yep.
But I'm assuming those are a bit more expensive.
Yeah, like 18 to $20, the ones that I saw
Oh,
that said
okay.
they were
Oh, I was
sapphire.
I was assuming they were like $50 or something like that.
No, I mean, that's not horrible, but we get a 3-pack for 7,
Right.
right? So you could buy
Right.
3, you can get 9. And if I went through 9 over the course of a life of, 1 year on a phone, if I kept it for
Right.
3 years like I did the last one, I probably went through more than that. But I got a bigger problem if I go through
Yeah.
that many. So anyway,
Right. And then most people can live with the cracks, right? I can actually live with the cracks. I just figured since I was replacing the back, just replace the front too.
yeah,
But I could actually live with those cracks for a couple of months. It's not the screen being cracked. It's just a little, the light little, it looks like
yeah,
almost a hair behind the screen. Like if
yeah.
you
If
were
you
installing it and the hair got
and
behind
you
on the
have to
screen and
you have to tilt it just right to be
right,
able to.
right.
Yeah, no, I had a couple of those, but this one actually looked like your windshield right on the corner, and it was
Oh
flaking.
yeah.
So
Okay.
anytime I
Oh, and that's
touched
actually
it,
dangerous too.
yeah, well, and it was right where my thumb goes.
Yeah.
So I would have touched it. It was like when on my other phone, right, when I dropped it out on the concrete and scuffed the stainless steel on the edge, and it just
Yeah.
happened to be right where I was holding it. I was like, nope, got to put something on that. So
Yeah, yeah. So as long as it's not chipping, most people can live with those cracks for it. So you don't have to rotate or change them out as quick as Greg and I, we
yeah,
do, but it's
I
still it's
can't.
still good to have multiple ones.
I almost can't pick up my wife's phone
Is it
because,
smashed?
and my daughter's the same way. I look at those and I go, why do I buy you nice things?
Right.
Right?
Remember those old flip phones? Maybe we could find one with 5G and just say, hey, just go ahead with the flip phone.
God. Anyway. All right, well let's dive into just some current stuff. We actually have quite a bit today. So what I want to do again, we're assuming that the um, iOS, iPad OS, Watch OS, and Sonoma, all of those updates are going to drop while we record today. I mean,
Right.
they've had 2 release candidates on iOS 17.1. So if they don't come out today, I'd be very, very surprised. So let's just do quick fire through these because I don't think there's anything brand new. We've talked about most of this stuff. Let's do quick fire through these and maybe give any detail on any of them that you care about. So, Jason, do you
Right.
want to start us off with iOS 17.1 and iPad OS 17.1? Because pretty much they're the same thing except for the one item
They're
on
the same.
iPad.
But
Yeah.
I have a complaint about iPad too, so we'll get to that when we get there. But yeah, starting off was AirDrop over the internet, right? Internet transfers, and this is something that we use almost daily here in my household. I was real excited for this feature. So basically, you don't have to be in close proximity to each other to be able to transfer files, to be able to finish files. I think to initiate it, you have to be in the same room. But then I can go out to the shop or come to the room, and I'm not standing there with my phone close to my wife's MacBook or something just to transfer some pictures or video files off. So looking forward to that. That was one I was disappointed that didn't make it in the original release. So hopefully we'll be getting that today. We can start using it. So the next one is standby controls. So standby, of course, is the when you put it on your MagSafe charger or whatever, it has analog clock or digital clock face, and it has a couple of controls there. Um, they're adding a feature where well, they're adding more controls to that, right? So just some more options. So not really a big deal. I don't know if anybody's really um, using this like, you know what I mean? If it was the breakout feature that they want it to be, right? I know
Yeah.
you're using it because you're new to MagSafe.
Yeah. I mean, I
Me, I
like
find
it.
it distracting.
I do find it a bit distracting on my desk.
Hmm.
But I do like the fact that now you'll be able to say never turn the always on display off, turn it off automatically after 20 seconds. So you have a little bit more finite
Right.
control. Because I was confused about this the first time I had sleep mode on and the always on display was turning off within like a few seconds. And it still does it automatically. And automatically essentially means that if you don't interact with or it can't tell that you're looking at the phone for a while, it's going to turn the always on display off, which is a good thing for battery.
Hmm.
Right. So, but now you have a little bit more finite controls. These are not the finite controls I want for standby. I want more widget controls. I want more, some of the other stuff that needs to come for standby. But hey, at least they're showing us with this one and one other feature that we'll talk about eventually. At least they're showing that they can go in and update some of this stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. So Apple Music updates, it was mostly just around being able to favorite songs and stuff from widgets and things like that. Not really a big deal to me because I don't use Apple Music like at all. I let so many 3 month trials pass me by whenever we buy new devices. Do you get any use out of that, or is that a big deal for you?
Yeah, I mean, I do favorite stuff, but it's mostly artists that I favorite so that I get
Right.
notified when they release something new. Um, and the customizing the playlists, I've just not got around to doing some of that kind of stuff. So we'll
Right.
see. The other one, the at the bottom of your playlist to be able to suggest songs that might go well in your playlist. I'll
Hmm.
try that at some point, but my music tastes are pretty specific. They're fairly
Yeah.
broad. I mean, I'll listen to everything from opera to, modern stuff, across the board. About the only thing I don't
Hmm.
listen to is um, rap and some of the techno kind of stuff. But
You're right.
I
Right.
just don't. I've never really found Apple's curation stuff to be in alignment with my tastes. So
Right. So the next thing is some updates to the wallet. So I see you have, so you can see balances and things like that within the wallet. I see you have Discover here. That slipped past me. So I'm actually excited to see that in action. I want to see that work. That's something I may get some use out of. Photo
yeah.
shuffle on the lock screen. I didn't realize that this was one of the features because I had used it. I didn't realize this was one of the features that got left out in the original release of 17.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the ability to be able to specify which ones it's shuffling before. I actually use Photo Shuffle, but I added the photos I wanted on there manually. So I think
Hmm.
this is just more the ability to do albums and people and nature, and which is actually what I do on the standby mode on the one standby screen that I have in my office is I have it shuffle a few key categories of stuff.
Right.
And I like that, but still can be a little distracting.
Yeah. Yeah. See, so I thought that was all included in 17. It was just one of those features I didn't use. I didn't realize didn't make the cut. So but yeah, maybe I'll play around with it after a few weeks. We'll see. So action button pocket mode. So tell me about this because that I don't have the action button, of course, on the phone. So is this one of the things you had been waiting for?
No, because this is people accidentally pressing the action button and it doing whatever it's supposed to do when it's in their pocket. So
Okay.
now it's using the all of the accelerometer and all of the sensors and stuff to know that it's in your pocket,
Right.
and it's going to make you hold the button even longer than you have to today to activate the action. So it's just supposed to do, less accidental activations
Okay.
of the button. So I'm not excited about this. I could care less about this because I don't have that problem. What I what this tells me is that they have the ability to customize the action
Yes.
button and they can do more with it. So please give me a double press, give me a triple press, and give me a long press. You can already do that with the power button. You can
Yeah.
single press to turn off the phone. You can double
Double
press to
press to
activate
get your
Apple
wallet.
Wallet. Yep.
Yeah.
And you can triple press as an accessibility thing. So
Right.
just do it with the action button. Come on.
Yeah. I'm sure it's coming, and I'm sure there's a reason why. Of course, we'll never know the reason why they didn't include it because Apple always does weird stuff. But yeah, I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's some bug fixes. I've seen pictures of that burn in. They're calling it burn in. It's not actually burn
Yeah.
in, right? Not like a LCD screen or old plasma monitor or something like that. But it does give some ghosting on the screen. So
Yep.
people have been seeing that. Some other bug fixes. Uh, that problem we mentioned last week where the phone was rebooted, or like me, I'll grab the phone because the screen is off and I'm reading with the Apple logo. So there's still no fix for that. There's still no update on no news on that.
Nothing. Apple hasn't
Yeah.
said anything about this, and it's hit a lot of press. So I'm surprised. But here's what I noticed. As a matter of fact, I probably should check and make sure that my phone actually backed up last night. So I was camping, and so I was not on Wi-Fi
Hmm.
Thursday through until I got home yesterday, and I did not notice a single respring or restart of my phone overnight while I was gone. And I have been
Okay.
seeing it about every other day. So I wonder, does it have something to do with your iCloud backup and it's running those processes at night
Right.
or something like that? So I mean, I can't confirm that. I'm not an expert with that, but I just thought it was funny that either they fixed something in the back end and it stopped doing it. I'll see. It didn't do
Hmm.
it this morning that I noticed, or has something to do with those processes that are, running your backups up to the cloud overnight or something like that. So we'll see. But yeah,
Right.
no word, which I'm surprised they haven't said anything about it.
Okay. Well, I had noticed it in a few days, but that doesn't mean it's fixed because it didn't happen every night, right? It
Yeah.
it would happen once or twice a week. So, and we're just getting started this week. So we'll see. Hopefully they did fix it. Maybe it's one of those things where they just fix it and like, hey, we don't even have to say anything about it. It's good.
Yeah.
So moving on to iPad OS 17.1, I actually was a little frustrated because I'm like, okay, I'm seeing all the videos for iOS. I'm like, okay, let's see what the changes are with iPad OS, right? Because that's my jam right there. That's my main device. Nothing. I'm like, okay, well,
No.
maybe my usual guys hadn't put out anything. Let me give it a few more hours. And I look and I'm like, nothing. So there's nothing new worth noting. Probably some bug fixes, some security, some background things like that. But there's nothing new worth noting in iPad OS 17.1 other than this janky pencil that they announced, which I
Yeah.
have some complaints about.
We'll talk about that here in a bit, right?
So there's nothing new. If you're like me, you were excited to see what was coming along for 17.1 for iPad OS. Nothing. You get a pencil support, and that's about it. And like I said, there's probably some background stuff too that's going on, but nothing worth noting. And I'm
Yeah.
really disappointed. So days later, I'm checking my regular guys. I'm checking all of, CNET, the Verge, all of the usual suspects, and there's nothing on 17.1.
Give us some love, Apple. Come on.
Right, right. So what's new in WatchOS?
Nothing I care about. Um,
that's
so same, right?
Yeah.
The double tap feature, which of course you and I won't get on the Ultra
Mhm.
because for whatever reason it's only on the Series 9 and the Ultra 2. That's out
Right.
there, and I want to see how this is going to really work out. I haven't heard a lot of people say this is, groundbreaking and all that kind of stuff, and I still argue that while it's a little more convoluted, the accessibility, accessibility gestures that I did a video on, I still think they're
Right.
better because you can do more with them, right? It's not just some default for Apple only apps, but we'll see. That's the one. And then the other one that I know you were excited about on the phone, because I think you
Hmm.
probably use this a lot with your face to face business, is Name Drop.
Right.
Well, now you'll be able to do it watch to watch too. And I would guess watch to phone,
Yeah.
but
I'm
I
thinking so.
I don't interact with people enough in person to go. I can't remember the last time I went to a conference, which is in, in the professional world when I probably would have
Mhm.
used it the most.
Right. Right. And I've only got it to work maybe three times. People are just updating their phones. You
Yeah.
know, I guess we were with my excitement and your excitement for iOS 17 at WWDC this year. I thought everyone was feeling that excitement and was going to rush to update. Uh, I don't think that was enough for people. The average person, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure a lot of techies jumped on board, but yeah, a lot of people just they're just not updating their phones. Remember Apple used to release the numbers like this
Yeah.
is like the most popular update, and everyone like 90% of our phones have already updated, and we're only 3 months in, and they don't
Yep.
release those numbers anymore. So I think a lot of people aren't. Also, too, this may be a side note. Do you think because if you're on 16 and you're still receiving updates to 16, when you go to update, you're just used to tapping update and going to update. Do you think separating that out? Because you have to look down at the bottom when you go to software update, and then it says update to 17 and it has information. If you hit update, it'll still update your phone. Do you think that may be causing some confusion to
I don't know if
non-techie
it,
people?
I think it's maybe not getting the adoption as quick as possible. So I had two
Right.
experiences with this over the weekend. So we were in in where my grandma lives, which is about an hour and a half away for my dad's memorial service. And Wyatt drove down by himself and decided to drive up over the mountain. Gorgeous time of the year, right? To be
Right.
driving up over these mountains. And so when he went to leave to come back home, I said, "Did you upgrade to 17 yet?" He's like, "I think I did." And so he pulls up this because I was going to have him use check in, right?
Yeah.
Perfect opportunity to use check in. And he pulls up the screen. And he's like, "Oh no," because he had an update for 16 and he had a 17 was still down at the bottom. So he just hasn't gotten
Right.
around to it. It doesn't have that key feature. And then I grabbed my grandma's phone to see if she had upgraded to the latest version, and she's not on 17. I didn't put her on 17. I didn't want to
Okay.
deal with telling her all the new stuff because I just got done working on her MacBook.
Hmm.
And so there's nothing I can think of in 17 that she needs or wants. And she even asked me, she says, "Well, what are the new things?" I said, "Well, let me look and see if it's going to break anything that she does because she
Hmm.
does a limited number of things, right?" So I just made sure she was on the latest version of 16. So I do think there's something to that. Um, but I still think it's the right move, allowing people to get security updates and not have to worry
Yes.
about, do I have all of the latest stuff that I can have and not go to the brand new. And especially when you think back when they switched to iOS 7, and then when they went away from all the skeuomorphism
Right.
stuff, right?
Skeuomorphism. Yep.
Yeah, all of that stuff. So I think it's the right move, but I do think it slows it down.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking because I do I because constantly, two or three customers in a row, they'll be like, "Hey, where can I reach you? Where can I?" And I'll hold my phone out to their phone if I see they have an iPhone and nothing,
Yeah.
nothing. So,
Yeah.
but so back to WatchOS name drop on the watch. I think I would use that just as much if we can get people on board to update, especially those older model watches. Um, uh, it's crazy, right? I'm talking about how people aren't updating the phone. I see people wearing their Apple Watches and they're just wearing them. Like they're not charged, they're not
I
on,
know.
they're not, people aren't getting the use out of their watches that I wanted. And when I see people, I'm like, okay, they're wearing it because they're used to having it on their wrist, right? They're used to having it on. But some of those older series, you have to charge those things so much. And I think people just get tired of it, right? I don't feel like pulling it off the charger or whatever. So we'll see. We'll see if we can get people on board, get them updated. I'm going to do my part and spread the word. Say these are the new features. Your watch can do it. Um, and try to get everyone I can on board so we can start using these features more.
You need to give every single person like that just a small business card that's got the QR code straight to the podcast and say,
Right.
"This will
Listen to
help."
this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk AirPods Pro 2. So there was an update to these, and I was watching Brandon Butch's video on this, and he's
Mhm.
like, conversation awareness seems to be better. And he specifically said, or I misheard, but he specifically said that other people around him weren't activating it and that he could sing along to the music and it wouldn't kick in and drop the volume, and that it was more responsive and all this kind of stuff. So I thought,
Okay.
great, because I really want to use that feature, but you know that I had that problem, right? So I go out
Right.
on these walks, I'm in the middle of the mountain or I'm up on the road all by myself. Nobody has to hear me sing, but I still sing. And so I thought, okay, this will be great. So I made sure I had the update. And by the way, the tip here is you can't force these updates. Just wait
Yeah.
for your AirPods to update. They will eventually. So I turned on conversation awareness again, and 30 seconds later, I turned it back off because it was still doing all of the same things it was doing before. If I
Hmm.
started singing along, I was riding my bike and I started singing along. It dropped it down. It was dropping it down too low. And I understand a little better that it's going to drop the volume, but if you keep talking, then it pauses so you don't miss out on stuff. And it still didn't bring it back fast enough for my liking. So I turned that off again.
Okay.
So who knows? I do think they improved the sound quality. So it was a kind of a stressful weekend, and there were two times that instead of going and laying down and watching a movie or playing a game or something, I just put my AirPods in and turned on
Hmm.
some music that would kind of help me defrag and stuff like that. And I think the quality is even better than when I first tried them. So that sound quality, I still have absolutely no issues and that kind of stuff. I don't
Because you didn't
think a
mention any problems with sound quality before,
No,
so
no,
it's
they're
just
great.
better. It just
Yeah, but
improved.
I
Okay.
think it's still getting better. So whatever they're doing to tweak that or whatever this update, I could notice a difference. But I don't think adaptive audio is working for me in the
Hmm.
way that they intended, right? So it's the first couple of times I went out on a bike ride, it seemed like when a car would go by, it would raise the volume and drop it. It's also supposed to push those sounds to the background,
Right.
right? So it's supposed to put those sounds out. Now maybe it's not long enough, like it needs like 5 or 6 seconds and then starts to adjust. And if a car is just driving by me, that's not going to happen, right?
Hmm.
So I want to keep working with that, but I hope they keep working on the algorithm behind that adaptive audio because I would love to for it to be able to move a lot faster, right? To recognize the dump truck when it
Yep.
first hears it and not 5 seconds after the dump truck is gone,
Right.
right? And because I actually, the one road that I do a lot of riding and walking on leads up to where they're dumping a lot of dirt from all the construction and stuff they're doing around
Okay. So a lot of
town.
trucks, a
So,
lot of
yeah.
equipment.
And it's right next to I-15, right? So I get the freeway noise and that kind of
Oh
stuff
yeah,
too.
18 wheelers
So,
and all of that.
yep. So the sound quality is awesome. I still leave it on adaptive audio and let it do its thing, but I'm hoping that gets better. So,
Yeah. Well, and they updated it this fast, this soon. So I'm pretty sure more updates are in the pipeline. So
yeah,
we'll
they've
see.
actually done 2 or 3 updates since,
Yeah.
and that's unusual. I mean, usually you get like 1 or 2 a year. So, Jason, tell us about the new Apple Pencil that you have a beef about. I'm
So
using an
this
Apple
is
Pencil, by the way. So for those that are watching the video, here's the second gen Apple Pencil. It's one of
right.
my tools. So I have thoughts on the Apple Pencil, but you start off and then I'll see if I need to fill in anything or if you're going to cover all of my thoughts.
So this is all you need to know about the new Apple Pencil. Womp womp womp. So the Apple Pencil is a great device, right? Greg just said he's using it. It's one of his tools that he uses daily. I actually have one, and I'll get to that here in a second. So what they did was basically take that Apple Pencil, which is a wonderful device, and stripped out everything that's nice about it, right? So this one doesn't have the pressure sensitivity. So, and this is to kind of make it like a regular pencil, right? You press down, you put a little pressure on it, and it'll make wider, lines. You kind of lighten up on it, and you can make finer straight lines, edges, and things like that. There's a button on it where you can tap to switch the tools, right? So if you wanted to switch between a highlighter or a fine point pencil or watercolor or something like that,
Or
and
the
I
eraser.
believe, or the eraser,
So I switch between the whatever I'm writing with and the eraser. That's what
right?
I do. And it's just a double tap. There's not a button. There's just a double tap, right? It's just a
Right.
certain
Yeah,
area
no
where you
button.
can double tap it.
Right, right. So, which again made that pencil so magical, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of their standout features, and wireless charging, right? So if you have the iPad Pro, I don't believe this works on the entry level iPad, but you take it, it's almost like a MagSafe magnet on the side of your.
Works
Oh,
on
it
my
works
mini.
on the mini. Yep,
Works
and
on my mini.
it just magnetizes, it just sticks to the side of the iPad, and it charges it, right? So you take all of that out, and what do you have, right? A basic stylus, right? So this is what Apple did. They introduced this one. Um, I don't see the price here. I forgot the price. Is
79
it
bucks
for
versus
79?
129 for the
79
regular one.
bucks. Right. So they strip out all of these features. They give it to you at a cheaper price. They're saying cheaper, right? Or more cost effective, not cheaper. They don't use the word cheap. So more cost effective, $79 stylus. I saw this and I'm like, why? What is the point? I have the version of Greg's pencil, a knockoff version from Amazon, $15, and it does everything that the Apple Pencil does, minus these three features, right? Minus these features that they stripped out of it. So why pay the 79 bucks? My it doesn't wirelessly charge. It has USB-C charging already, right? This was before Apple announced theirs. It already has USB-C charging. So I can use my iPad charger to charge my pencil up. It has a long battery life, a great battery life on it, and it's just $15. So I think Apple kind of dropped the ball on this one. Like, who is this pencil for? Because if anybody wants an Apple Pencil, I'm going to say go and buy the Apple Pencil. It's awesome. But if
Yeah.
anybody wants just a cheaper version of it, I'm not going to recommend the $79 monstrosity. I'm going to tell them to go to Amazon and get the $15 one. The build quality is awesome on this little cheap thing.
Yeah. Now, I mean, it will magnetically attach to an iPad that has that, right? Any of the iPads
Mine
that have
does
the
too.
flat sides, it will do it. So that's great. And it does have the hover feature, which I find super interesting. That the hover feature on the new iPad Pros is where it starts to tell you where the pencil's going to go when you get close to the screen before you touch it.
Right.
So it has that, which is odd because that only works on, it doesn't work on my mini. It'll work on
Hmm.
your iPad because you've got the latest
Right.
and greatest Pro, right? So I just, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you want the brand or whatever the case may be, this is a good way to go.
Right.
If you're just going to use it to like write notes or something like that, yeah, get the $15
Yeah.
thing from Amazon and call it good. If you really want
Right.
it to integrate into the ecosystem, right? Then you go Apple, and it does have USB-C charging, but you have to plug a USB-C cable into it. It doesn't plug into the USB-C port, right? It's
Hmm.
got a little cap slider, and that comes up, and then you have to plug a cable in. So I was listening to a podcast this morning, and they said, well, what if you're at a coffee shop doing some work and your pencil dies? If you don't have that little cable, you're done. There's no
Yep.
way to charge it. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
So uh, anyone that's listening out there, if you have an Apple Pencil, shoot us a message right into the show and let us know if you think using that hover feature. One, if you use the hover feature, right? Because that's just a feature that I don't feel I would get a need out of. So if that hover feature is enough to pay that difference between, $15 and $79, if that'll be worth it to you, because Greg and I, we often say you get what you pay for, right? We are anti cheap charger, anti cheap cases, anti cheap anything from Amazon. But every now and then we'll run into some good quality feature, good quality, devices or accessories that will say, no, go ahead and get this one. This one's good. And I think this $15 pencil versus the $79 pencil, I would take that challenge any day. I think you will be happy with that.
Good enough is good enough, right? I mean,
Right. Right.
if you don't
If,
need
like
it,
you
if you're
said,
not
you're
an
just taking
artist,
notes.
and I'm not
Yeah.
an artist, right? I, I want easy though. So I go with whatever's in the Apple ecosystem because I know I'll be able to do everything I need to
Right.
with it, right? So anyway, but I
Yeah.
did have, my wife and I both had other Apple pencils and we ended up selling them because she never used it,
Right.
right? So we ended up selling them. So Jason, tell me about Ultra Apple Watch Ultra 2 screen issues. I had to laugh when I saw the solution to this. It's almost
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Steve Jobs saying you're holding it wrong.
Right. Right. So Apple's fancy new Ultra that, if you remember, I was pretty unhappy that they released a new version and they added some features that ours didn't have, that I was pretty unhappy about it. So apparently there's reports of the screen flickering and some of the complications turning pink, right? So it's having some issues whenever it the always on display, whenever it goes to the on display, some of the complications are flashing, the screen is flickering, and some of them are like just stuck pink, right? So a hassle to most folks. I know it's not a big deal. It's not stopping the functions of the phone. I mean, of the watch. You can still use it the way you want to use it, but pretty annoying on such an expensive device that you just bought. So Apple says they're aware of the issue. They're currently working on a fix for it. There's a temp fix. Turning off the always on display will resolve the issue until a permanent fix is found, which is good for anyone who didn't buy the watch for the always on display,
Which
right?
is
For
no
using
one.
these complications.
Because
Yeah,
if you
which is
don't
everyone.
want
That's
the
the point
always
of buying.
on display, just keep your
Exactly.
Series 7.
Right, right. Exactly. That's the point of upgrading it. So if you upgrade it for these new features, Apple recommends you stop using the new features.
Yeah, this is.
That's karma. That's karma.
I'm going to hold on my rant on this until follow up. I'll
Right,
hold.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wasn't happy about it, but I got a good laugh. But that is annoying to tell someone to not use your fancy features just yet until we fix it. Thanks for
Yeah.
the $900.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah,
So they better fix it soon. And I don't. There's no reports that in WatchOS 10.1 they fixed it. So I guess we'll
yeah,
see if that's the case. I think if they've acknowledged this, they will tell us when they fix it. So that
yeah,
means there's probably going to be 10.1.1 coming sooner rather than later, I would think. So
yeah. Hopefully, very soon. That's
yeah,
that's pretty annoying to tell someone not to use the new feature that they love so much.
yep.
So, and I see you got one thing here. This one slipped past me because I hadn't heard any complaints about this, and that's the speakers on the iPhone 15 having some crackling issues. Have
Yeah,
you
I
had any
just
of
saw.
these?
Nope, I actually tested it last night. I turned on some music and cranked up my phone and listened. It's just a report that when you really turn up the music, that the top speaker seems to be that it starts to crackle. And the article I read, they were with a friend. The friend said, "Yeah, I'm having this issue," and they played it and they said, "Oh yeah, you needed to take that into the Apple Store." So they took
Mhm.
it into the Apple Store. The tech listened to the music, ran some diagnostics, and offered them a replacement.
Okay.
Replacement did the same thing.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some tuning or something that's going to happen in the back end for that speaker output. I mean, any speaker, not any, but 99.9% of speakers, if you crank the music up too loud and it gets
Hmm.
too much output, right, will start to crackle and distort and do all those kinds of things, which is why I
Hmm.
never, even on these AirPods Max that I have, I don't like listening to them at max volume. I do sometimes when I'm editing our podcast because I can pick up little things, but anything will do that, but this wasn't like that. It was different. So I don't know. We'll see if this comes up anymore or if they act on it. But I just thought I'd let folks know if you do have this issue, even though that one instance the replacement did the same thing, I still strongly recommend you take it into an Apple store if you have one close. Have them do the diagnosis and have them replace it because you don't want to run the risk of this is a hardware issue and you think they're going to fix it via software and
Hmm.
then you run out of warranty and you end up with a speaker that's bad because if it really is that top speaker it could eventually affect the quality of the phone calls because that's where you get the sound from a phone call too.
Right.
All right, got a couple of tips in here for today. So I did not realize this. So I've been using QR codes on some of our stuff and some of my leaders lift stuff. And it
Hmm.
always hit me and said, well, if they pull this up on their phone, how are they going to scan the QR code with their phone to get to the website? Right. And
Right.
so it was just this thing. And I did not realize that this had happened. And this is an article from 9 to 5 Mac, and they called it a PSA, public service announcement. You can open a QR code on your iOS device without scanning it. All you have to do is tap and hold on the QR code, and you get a menu that pops up. And one of the options
Really?
is open in Safari or whatever it is. I tested this last night on one of my QR codes to like one of our blog posts that we did.
Hmm.
Yep, works like a charm. This tip to me is worth like $1 million because not really. I wish if enough of you want to go read my articles that it generates $1 million in revenue, go ahead, right? But just to be able to do this, I'm going to start putting this on the actual right underneath the QR code because I always put the website address in case somebody just needs to go to it. I'm going to
Hmm.
replace that and just say, if you're on an iPhone or an iPad, tap and hold to go to the website, right? I mean,
Yeah.
super simple. Did you know that this was available?
I didn't know, and I'm always lecturing people about because so we have our QR code to the company built into our logo, right? On the retail bags, we build we have a QR code in the logo, and when I tell people, hey, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, blah blah blah, just scan that label, and they always go to take a picture of the label. I'm like, no, 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 don't do that because you can't get to it that way. I didn't realize that this was even a thing. I mean, this is
Yeah.
like the best tip of the year.
Yeah. And this came up while I was at my grandma's. Is my grandma and my uncle, they were saying, well, how on an iPhone do you go to a QR code? And I said, well, you just hold the camera up to it
Right.
and then it'll pop up a little yellow thing. And he says, well, I do it differently on my Android phone. I'm like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but on the iPhone, right, if you put your camera over it, you don't have to take the picture. Just scan it. It'll put a little yellow box around it, right? And then tap
Mhm.
on the yellow link that pops up. And he's like, oh. So
So
yeah.
I'm wondering if this is possible on older versions of iOS too, and maybe Android
Uh
too. Because I do get a lot of Android phones, you know, and a lot of people have that QR code thing turned off. I don't know if it's off by default or for some reason they turn it off. So a lot of Android users they just can't scan that QR code. So I'm wondering if yeah, maybe I could just start telling people, oh, go ahead and take a picture of it. Just tap on it and hold it.
Yeah, because that's where mine
I'm gonna
was.
do
Mine
some
was an
testing.
image, right? It was the downloaded image from Canva, which is where I do all of our image stuff. It was
Hmm.
that downloaded image in my photos library that I pulled up and just tap and hold. And I'll test it on. I've got my grandma had a old iPad Mini. I think it's even older than my mom's iPad that would run like
Hmm.
iOS 12 point something. I think this one's even older. So I'll see if it works
Okay.
on there, and I'll
Yeah,
try and remember
let's
to do
test
that
that
and
out
report
on
back.
older
So,
devices
yeah.
and see. But yeah, I'm always like stopping people like, no, a picture's not gonna work. You have to, and then I go around the counter and I'll grab their phone and I'm like, no, scan it like this, and I tap on it, and yeah, it's always a whole thing. So if this works on older devices or any more devices, this will help me out a lot.
Yeah. So we'll see if we can test it. I'm actually just looking to see um yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
So Jason, do you want to talk through this next one because you prompted this one? And I thought, yeah, I'm good. But go ahead, you can tell the story.
Right. So I'm always conscious of texting great. I'm a night person, right? Me being up to 3 a.m. On a normal day, even if I have to be up early in the morning, is normal for me. So, and that's when I can get a lot of work done. I'm usually working on an episode or outlining an episode or adding my notes in for Greg's episode or something like that. So I'm always conscious of, in the notes, if I add Greg's name, it'll send him a notification and say, hey, Jason asked a question or made a change or whatever. And the same thing with texting. I'm always conscious about texting. But the good thing about Greg is I'll go to the messages and it'll say at the bottom, Greg has notifications silent. So I'll say, okay, I can text Greg all I want. He'll get it in the morning time, right? But this particular time, he didn't have it on, or at least it didn't appear at the time. Or maybe you turned it on after you got the notification. I'm not sure, but I didn't see it. And I'm like, hey, sorry to text you so late, but if you want to basically hopscotch an episode because you had outlined your episode, we can go ahead and do that and use next week's episode. I'm fine. And you replied back like, hey, no, I got it. I'll be working on it in the morning. So I didn't want to disturb him on his break too. Greg, he needs to relax. So I didn't want to have any show, any business, anything going on this weekend. So I always feel a little bad, but man, I thought like this would be a cool feature to have to send messages silently, right? If you have that night bird in your family or the early right, like I'm a night person, but I'm not a morning person, and my brothers are, and man, they go at it in the morning, just like 6 a.m. in the morning. Messages are flying back and forth, and it annoys me. Yes, I need to have a focus mode, but wouldn't it be a cool feature if we can send messages silently, right?
Yeah.
I can just send a message and say, hey, this is no big deal. I don't need a response back right away. Just send it quietly and it'll show up on your phone, but not notify you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I use this just so everybody knows Jason's also an hour ahead of me from a time zone standpoint,
Right, right.
right? And so I worry about this when my grandkids wake me up at 5:30 in the morning. And then I see Jason's message, and I was just looking back to that thread. So you sent it at 12:30 my time. I don't know why it wasn't showing that I was in sleep focus. But then
Yeah,
I
it
sent
didn't
my
have it.
reply at 6:12 a.m. my time.
Yeah,
So Jason sent his message at a time I wasn't going to read it, and then I sent my reply at a time Jason wasn't going to read it.
right.
So, you know, I think it's fine. There's a whole lot of discussion that could be had, and that's not for us to decide about, what are the societal norms? What's courteous? What's not? And I think that's why the sender doesn't have the option, unless they want to override, right? The sender doesn't have the option of dictating whether it's a notification or not. It's all on the receiver to do
Right.
that. And I think that's the right thing. Do you remember back when we used to have to pay for text messages by those sent and those received? And it's
Yes.
like, okay, come on, why am I paying for text messages received? I can't control that. And I think it's funny that on my hotspot, I got a bill for a text message that came in on my hotspot because it's just a phone line, right? And so
Right.
people can send messages to it. And I looked at my bill and there was like a 10-cent charge for a text message received because, of course, I don't have a text messaging package on the hotspot.
Right.
And that just reminded me back of those old days when we used to have to monitor that kind of stuff. So, I think it's good that it's on the receiver to be able to manage a lot of that kind of stuff because
Hmm.
otherwise, I mean, it's voting season and all that kind of stuff, and the political stuff is just all
Right.
over. And for whatever reason, Dustin, when he signed up to vote or whatever in Texas the last time, put my phone number for all of this
Right.
stuff. And so I'm getting
Oh,
all
and
these things that
Texas is
say,
real spammy.
"Hey, Dustin, this is so and so with this and this. Can we count it?" And it's just like, stop,
Yes.
stop, right? So anyway, yeah. But
Yeah, yeah.
no,
Texas is real spammy when it comes to political stuff, and they share the information, right,
yeah,
from one candidate to another. So one candidate you have no interest in, he'll be hitting you up the next season because he got
yeah,
you're on the list from the previous, you know.
yeah. So, but this is, we talked about this early on. If communication is really the center of these devices, the more controls they can give us, the better off,
Right,
right? And so, anyway,
right. So this may be a side note too, and we can cut this if you want to write down this time. But so we actually had this conversation way back when we worked together at Stewart, right? And we got together one day. It's one of those meetings you had just with your leadership team, and we just talked about finding that work life balance, right? And for one, it was a couple of team members, me being included, that would work through the evening, right? We didn't. We just that's just what we did. It was almost recreational, right? To go work my 8 hours during the day, come home in the evening, and as we're watching a movie or a TV show, me go and clean out old devices out of Zenprise or whatever MDM we were using at the time, right? To clear those uh, devices out. But we got to a point where we were messaging and emailing each other in the leadership group, and you had to put a stop to it, right? You said, hey, we have to be respectful of each other's time. Not only that, we shouldn't send messages and expect a reply back, right? Even if you send a message, that's on you. That's fine to ask a question, but don't expect a reply back until 8 a.m. the next morning when the person's supposed to be on the clock, right? We shouldn't be sending messages all night through the evening, or we shouldn't feel obligated to have to reply back to these messages either. And I remember that was one of the lessons I had to learn early on about not only finding that work life balance, one, not working so much, but two, not expecting other people on your team to be able to work like that. So yeah, yeah. Just I guess it should just to sum it up, it should be on the sender. I mean, the receiver to be able to manage how they and what times they want to get those notifications.
and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people just keep their phone on silent. Period.
Right,
End of
right,
story. Right, and they don't want to have all of the notifications popping up on every single device that they own. And so
yeah,
there's something to be said for that. I mean, if I really part of the problem with society today, at least in the US, is this fear of missing out or this it bleeds into talking about work-life balance. And
hmm,
this is my other podcast. I've talked a lot about this, right? But
right,
this whole concept of in the US, we don't tend to take all of our vacation time, which is already much less than people in Europe, for example, right?
right,
And so we get less right off the bat, and we don't take what we get. Excuse me. And a lot of the research, excuse me, a lot of companies have gone to unlimited vacation.
right,
And the reason they go, well, there's two reasons they go to that. Number one is that in some states, because you don't accrue vacation, they don't have to pay it out when you leave, right? So you don't get this
Yeah.
big giant payout of 6 weeks of vacation that you've accrued that you were never able to take. That's one of the
Yeah.
reasons. But the other reason they do that is because um, studies have shown that when you have unlimited vacation, you take less vacation. And
Really? Wow.
part of that is this fear of, if I take vacation, how am I going to be perceived, and are there going to be negative
Yeah.
consequences and all that kind of stuff. And it takes the right kind of boss, and I hope that I have been, and that I would always be the kind of the boss that would encourage people to take their time and to find that work life balance. That's just one example
Right.
that you gave, but it takes the right kind of boss for you to be able to do that. I mean, at my last job, I was the acting director while my boss took a six month sabbatical,
Yeah.
and it was, or 6 month leave of absence, not sabbatical, but
Hmm.
6 month leave of absence to try and get things in her life where she wanted them. And it was her boss that suggested that she do that. Right. He said, hey,
Right.
instead of resigning, because she was getting to that point, take a leave of absence. Let me see if I can get HR to approve that. Right. And
Right.
so, which is great. And you and I have a mutual friend who doesn't listen to this podcast, but listens to my other one, who a few weeks ago said, I'm trying to figure out when I can take my vacation.
Right.
And the reason she was trying to figure out when she could take it is because, oh, I have this on this day, and I have this for the company, and this and this and this. It was always about, it's not convenient for the company for me to take my time off. So she struggles to schedule it and get her time off in. And I'm always
Right.
reminding her, you got to take your time, right? So there's something to be said for that. And so if we round up this part of this tip, right, which is about, really was about not getting texts when you don't want them, use these devices, right? Use these devices to set those focus modes, or don't
Right.
be afraid to turn off your notifications. I mean, I got to the point at Stewart when we were working there, and in my last regular job too, where when I go on vacation, I turn off the email from the company on my
Hmm.
phone. I would just completely turn it off. I would go in and I would hide it, and I would hide the calendar, and that was it. That was the only way I could go out to, let's say I was at an amusement park or something, right? And I needed to wait in
Hmm.
line to get on a ride. If there was a notification badge on the email, I was going to look at it, right? And then you get
Right.
sucked in to that. So,
Right. Right.
yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
So,
Never turn it off.
yeah, we're going to leave this in. I put down the timestamps, but we're going to leave it in because I
Okay.
think it's good to talk about that, because these devices, either we can control them
Hmm.
or we can allow them to control us. And what information we consume when is something we definitely can control on these devices.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, let's leave that in. I thought it was a good conversation. I took that lesson with me for years since we had that meeting, and I've given that lesson to so many other people, coworkers and friends, family members, and all of that. It's finding that work life balance because if and the company doesn't care, right? They'll be fair. They'll pay you for your time, but you know, if you're going to work, they're going to accept the work, right?
Yeah.
If you work
Especially if
your
you're
eight
on
hours,
salary, right?
right? If you're
Especially
on
if you're on
salary,
salary.
yeah, and you're up 3 hours in the evening tightening up reports or something like that, they don't care. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So yeah, no, that was a good lesson. You should leave that in,
Yeah. And good lesson. And then you and I went to work for ourselves, which is a
right?
whole other,
Right, because there's no work life balance here, and I
yeah.
fight every day to try to make something
Yeah.
seem
And,
like I have a work life balance.
right. And I thought about this over the weekend. I mentioned that I'm going into my slow time. You're going into your busy time. I'm
Right.
going into my slower time because people are going to start taking their time off and all that kind of stuff. And it drives me crazy. I can't let myself just, I mean, I was out of town for my dad's memorial service, and I'm still thinking about, what should I be working on? What should I be working on? What should I be? And Jason's over there
Right.
going, yeah, 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 we know you.
Right.
This is
Right.
exactly what you
But
do.
this is what I was telling you Friday when I messaged you. Like, enjoy that time. Enjoy every minute. Check out for a little bit, like I do when I'm on the ship. Right. I don't want to deal with anything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
Where we at? Follow up or
let's do some follow up.
okay.
Uh, do you feel like Apple's ecosystem is stabilizing at all?
So, and I thought about this earlier. Well, last night when my Wi-Fi issue started, and maybe all of my complaints, all of my issues has to do with the issue that I'm having with my router, right? With my home hub disconnecting and reconnecting over and over again when I'm outside of the home. And maybe some background syncing, some iCloud backup. Maybe it's due to my Wi-Fi issue. How about you?
No, because so I don't think it's all that. I mean, it definitely could be some of that, right? But I was outside of my network for the last
Hmm.
5 days, right? And I was still seeing issues. I mean, I'm having issues with my watch not sending a message when my phone is in my other hand, right? Just coming
Right.
back and rejecting as if it couldn't get a connection and send something out. So
Mm.
there, I still think, and that's happened more than once. This is not when I'm out on cellular. This is when I'm there with my phone right
Right.
with me. Um, and then last night, part of the problem was I didn't realize you and I were both in the node at the same time.
Hmm.
But I had made an update earlier in the day on my phone to our show outline today. And last night when I was in working on stuff, it wasn't there. It was
Right.
on my phone, it was on my iPad, but wasn't on my Mac. Now, I've had that syncing issue with the notes in the Mac before, and you close the app and open it
Right.
back up, and
We had that
you're good to
issue with
go.
16.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I closed the notes app and opened it back up, still wouldn't pull the update. I copied the whole section off of my iPad,
Hmm.
deleted it, and pasted it back in, and no changes. But yet I was making changes up further in the note that were coming through just fine on all devices. So it's
Okay.
almost like that end section became this black box. And so, yeah, that could be specific to the notes, but I just don't feel like everything is solid on the back end. So I'm hoping that we get 17.1 and all the point ones today,
Yeah.
right? And that, some of that and other fixes. I'm hoping that and some of those other fixes are gonna stabilize this. So that's my
Right.
personal take. If y'all are still experiencing some of that, no, you're not alone. I really don't think it's all on your network. So I hope they get it fixed.
Yeah. I hope so. It's been a frustrating issue, but I'm just looking for any and every excuse to get rid of this router. So,
Now I know we're going to get done with the show and you're going to go tackle some of that. So maybe next week
right.
Jason will have a new network set up and that might change the topics for next week
Yeah.
for us to talk through some of that. So
Yeah. I'll give you guys an update, but just long story short, my router, my new router, I say new, it's about a year old. It's having some major issues. So we'll
yeah,
give you an update next week.
yep. The other follow up I wanted to do is this was my first time really traveling with MagSafe and the new phone.
Hmm.
So new phone meaning the camera, and you'll know that I was a little bit anxious about battery life, and so I had that 80% on because I thought, yes, why not, right? I should be able to
Right.
get through, especially if I keep putting it on a stand, right? I'm sitting at my desk for several hours a day. It's going to be on the stand there charging, so it's going to sit there. Might as well just let it sit at 80% because that should
Right.
be good enough. Well, I was listening to ATP and Casey said the same thing I did, which is I start to think about it. And it's not really stress as in real stress, right? But it's just one more thing that I think about. Am I going to get through the day and thinking about it on the weekends?
Right.
So I actually turned it off before I went on the trip and turned it back to
Okay.
optimize. I turned it back to optimize because I figured, you know what? Maybe Apple's got it figured out that it knows when it permanently comes off the charger. I mean, so
Right.
far it's still charging to 100%, but it takes a day, several days or a week, right, to learn your habits and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. And I'm sure I threw it off last week by not putting it on a charger at all during the day.
Hmm.
So we'll see if it's smart enough. So I've got it back on that. For charging, I hadn't bought a charger for the trailer yet because we're nearing the time when I don't camp quite as much. So I was going to wait and see what else came out over the next couple of months and then get
Hmm.
something before I get really busy. So I just took the desk one, which is just the 2-in-1, right? It's got the
Right.
cheap plate and then it's got the MagSafe stand. I just took that because I have to I take my HomePod Mini out of the office and put it in the trailer when we go, and they're both
Hmm.
plugged into that same dual Anchor 47-watt charger. So
Right.
I just unplugged the one, grabbed both devices, and took that with me, and it worked fine. I charged
Yeah.
it overnight. I mean, I was never around Wi-Fi. I was out doing stuff during the day. I mean, it would get charged a little bit when I'd get in the car and go anywhere, but that was
Hmm.
usually 10 minutes at the most that I was driving anywhere. So what that's making me remember, I didn't get MagSafe certified, which means I don't have the 15-watt fast
Right.
charging, but I never really had a problem. Even yesterday coming home, now it was on the car charger for over an hour, so maybe that was part of it, but I just
Hmm.
never got the battery down. I charged it to 100% every night because it would
Hmm.
overnight, but I never got it down low enough. So it's making me wonder if I actually need fast charging in the trailer. Because remember, if I go to fast charging, it's going to more than double the cost
Yeah, the
of
price. Yeah.
any of these. So I'm thinking maybe I just get something more portable, whether it's fast charging or not. And if I do need a fast charge for some reason, I just
Hmm.
plug it in. I still
Right.
always have the option of plugging the USB-C cable in
Yes.
and being good to go.
So I
So
remember you saying you were thinking about getting a dedicated MagSafe for the camper, right?
yeah,
So taking this one with you, is that you think that's going to change your mind? Are you going to get a dedicated one, or are you going to go with
I
the
think I'll.
portable one? Because you see, charging is not going to be an issue.
Yeah,
And then
I,
after a year or so, when you would think charging would be an issue, we're going to be on the 16. I'm pretty sure both of us are going to go to the
yeah.
16. So are you ever going to have battery issues with your phone now?
No, so that was the other thing that Casey said is I only keep my phone for a year.
Yeah.
If I run through enough charges that that it's a problem after a year, then
Right.
I have a bigger challenge, right? And battery
Right.
replacements are not that expensive. So my plan with this one is after a year, it's going to become my webcam, which means I'll turn on the 80% limit, right? And
Yep.
just because it's just going to be plugged in anytime it's being used, because I like a direct connection into my Mac.
Hmm.
So yeah, I got thinking I don't need to worry about managing the battery life. So we'll see what the optimize does. And then if I don't like that, I'm just going to turn it and say, don't do anything. Just charge it to 100% all the time and call it
Hmm.
good. Um, and then I think I'll get a portable because this was a little bit awkward in the nightstand area that I have next to my everything in the trailer is compact,
Right.
right? And I have
Yeah. You
this,
got to save space.
yeah, I have this cubby, and this was about 2/3 the height of the cubby, and
Okay.
that's a little too tall, and it was a little awkward to get it in there and that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking, I mean, I like the Anchor Cube, but it's super expensive. It's like
Hmm.
$150, but they have those foldable ones, right? And
Right.
Mophie has one for sale on Apple's website, and they've got a few others that. So I think I'm gonna look into something like that.
Right.
Um, that's enough to charge. I don't, not my watch. My watch, I need to have the fast charging, right?
Yeah.
And so I have a dedicated plug and a puck. I already bought those. They're out in the trailer. They just stay out in the trailer. That's what I need to fast charge because when I go on my
Right.
rides and stuff without my phone, that sucks the battery out of this, even the Ultra. Right. So I
Yeah.
want the fast charging there, and I sleep track with it. So it's only going to be on the charger for an hour at most
Yeah.
during the
Yeah.
day. And so I need it to charge. So put that aside. So
And
I really just need a 2-in-1 portable that's got a cheap pad for my AirPods or MagSafe that will work with the AirPods and the phone and call it good.
yeah. Okay.
So
Well, yeah, that makes sense. So maybe you can go back to revisit some of those ones that I kind of talked you out of before, which was kind of like a little tripod. They kind of sit flat. You kind of put the phone on landscape mode and it
yeah,
charges it. So maybe something good like that for the trailer.
yeah. So I can't imagine I'll have to very often charge both the AirPods and the phone at the same time, right? So, and I
Hmm.
always have the option of plugging one in.
Right.
So, yeah,
Right.
we'll see. Now, the other thing, this is the first time I've taken my camera really anywhere, and I took a bunch of pictures. I actually posted one on Instagram. I don't know if you saw it, but I took
Mm.
a couple of live photos of the river that runs right behind the campground. And it was, anybody else wish they had this in their backyard? Because it wasn't super high, right? Because we're towards the end of the season. But the camera is just phenomenal. I was taking pictures
Right.
with the grandkids and doing all that kind of stuff, and it was just fantastic. So this
Yeah.
camera is amazing. And
Right. Right.
I use the 5X, I use the 2X, I use the 1X, and I'm using the macro lens way more than I thought I would. Not necessarily just to do close-ups of flowers and stuff like that, but
Right.
I'm finding that I really enjoy being able to get that lens. So, yeah, I mean, traveling with this, I'm all in. I couldn't be happier with the phone.
Right, right. So I know I had this on next week's episode, but I'll talk about it now. Greg always sends me pictures from bike rides and hikes and things like that, or just when you're out running or jogging or something, he'll send pictures, and always enjoyed them. They always been so great, right? But now when you send something, one of the first things I do is just try to zoom in as much as I can zoom in just to see how much detail is added. And yeah, I'm impressed. I love that camera. It is one of the things I was excited about for the 15, and yeah, I'm enjoying it. At least through you, I'm enjoying it. So really good camera.
Well, let's tackle one more topic. And so I'll start this off. There are rumors that there's a new iMac
Hmm.
and possibly new MacBook Pros coming at the end of this month, like literally on the 30th or 31st. That's what Mark
Right.
Gurman at Bloomberg reported, that they will have an event on one of those days and introduce those. Now, there's the background on that part. The other
Hmm.
background on this is, I've mentioned this. I tried, I don't know how I would have been able to work over the weekend and over this trip well without having power close by,
Right.
because my battery seems to be getting worse. And I mean, some of it's the amount of stuff that I do with it, but like I had done a little bit of work Thursday before we left. And then Friday morning, I had a meeting. So I had to use Teams. Of course, they use Teams, not my favorite. But,
Hmm.
but by the end of that hour and 45 minutes Teams meeting, I had to plug in because it was warning me that it was going to shut down a computer.
Right.
And so, a little bit of work Thursday, I hadn't plugged it in, just sitting in the backpack. And then that hour and 45-minute meeting, and my battery is gone. So I'm gonna have to have another option for portable computing, right?
Hmm.
And I really, really want to go iPad, but there's some question, and I told Jason he needed to listen to one of the podcasts I listened to, the segment on doing everything on an iPad versus, having
Right.
a Mac as well. So there's some concern about how easy or how much, jumping through hoops I'd have to do to like record this podcast. So I really want to go iPad. If I go iPad, it's easy. It's the 12.9-inch Pro, or if they come out with a bigger one, it would be whatever the bigger version of the iPad
Right.
Pro is. So that's pretty
Same here.
straightforward. But we talked, what, 3 or so episodes ago, and we actually struggled to talk about the iPad lineup because it's a mess,
It
right?
is.
This one has this feature and this one has this feature, and that's actually come up on a couple of podcasts. So the iPad lineup is kind of messy. But when I started last night thinking about these rumors about the new Macs, specifically MacBooks, because I'd have to have something that was portable, you've
Hmm.
got the 13-inch MacBook Air, you've got the 15-inch MacBook Air,
Hmm.
then you've got the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, and then you've got the 14-inch MacBook Pro and the 15-inch or the 16-inch MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
And so you've got all of these devices, and I lay it out like that, and you think, oh, well, that's super easy. The Airs are the consumer devices, and then the MacBook Pros are the professional devices, and you just decide what size of screen you want. Well, I'm looking at this, and it's not that easy. So the
It's not.
MacBook Air and that 13-inch MacBook Pro, it says they have the same number of Thunderbolt ports. But what you have to remember is that one of those Thunderbolt ports on the 13-inch MacBook Pro, you have to use to power the device. And on the
Yep.
MacBook Air, you have MagSafe. You can power through USB-C and through that Thunderbolt port, but you have the MagSafe to power the MacBook Air. And the
Hmm.
MacBook Air's got a 1020 or a 1080p webcam, and the 13-inch MacBook Pro's got a 720. And so I was last night, I just kind of threw some in there, and Apple's got really good on their website, right, where you can compare different devices, and just
Hmm.
started getting the pricing for where I would want them, because I want a terabyte hard drive just because of all the video and stuff that we're doing. And I want enough memory that I don't have to worry about this thing. And those two, the 13-inch M2 uh, MacBook Air and the 13-inch MacBook Pro, when I finally got them configured and added Apple Care, they were
Hmm.
only a couple $100 apart. That the Pro one was a little more expensive.
Right.
And but yet everything in the MacBook Air is newer technology, but it's the Pro device. And I know I'm one of only four people that might say this, but I like the touch bar.
Yeah.
Nobody else likes the touch bar. I only use it for like four things.
Screen brightness.
I use it for screen
Is that
brightness,
right?
volume
That's the
and
only thing I
mute,
use it for. Yeah.
and to take screenshots.
Okay, I hadn't done that.
Yeah. So I don't use it for a lot of stuff, but I like it. And so I think it feels like the MacBook lineup can be just as confusing as the iPad lineup. And now
Yep.
I was listening to Upgrade and they were talking about this and they said most people should just use the MacBook Air. That's what
Right.
most people
I think
need.
so.
And so I'm thinking, okay, it's got all the newer technology and I could get the memory and the hard drive and then but it's still going to be a $2,000 machine.
Hmm.
But then I start thinking about pure power because one of the things that I do is a lot of video rendering,
Right.
right? And so, am I going to be able to get? I mean, they'll both go up to 24 gigabytes of RAM, but if I go to the MacBook Pro 14-inch, I can get up to 96 gigabytes
Yeah.
of RAM, and so it's just their whole lineup seems to be confusing right now. If we get this
Hmm.
event and at the end of October we might get some clarity on this. And so far this year no iPads have changed, none.
Right.
The only iPad change is that Apple Pencil we talked
Right.
about just a minute ago. So if no iPads change this year, maybe next year they're all going to launch at the same time and it's going to
Right.
clarify the
It'll be a
iPad
huge
line.
focus. Hmm.
So here's my question for you, Jason. If I have to buy a computer in the next 3 to 6 months, and this is the state of things for the next 3 to 6 months,
Hmm.
what do I do?
So yeah, I'm with you. It was simpler when it was just a MacBook Air, and a MacBook Pro, right? Basically, small, medium, and large. No, not necessarily talking about the size, but you get the features that you want. Small features on the MacBook, the entry level. The MacBook Air was always thinner, lighter. It had some of the Pro features, but in a smaller form factor, right? More portable. The body was always thinner, was always lighter, which is the name Air, right? This is what they got the name Air from. And then the Pro was for you know prosumers and professionals and things like that. It had all of the latest features, all of the latest technology, all of the bells and whistles. So it made it clear what you wanted. If you were just getting it for school or just needed to shoot out a few emails or whatever, you went with the MacBook, the entry level. If you wanted to be more portable but needed a little more power, you went with the Air. And of course, if you were a professional, you went with the Pro. So I think there's no question from my standpoint that you're a prosumer professional now, right? You're not going to make it with the entry level MacBook. That's out of the question. The MacBook Air, the 15-inch that came out this year that we loved when they announced it, we said it was awesome. 90% of people can go with that and love it. I don't think that's the one for you, right? So if there are new pros, new chips, faster processor, faster Wi-Fi, things like that, then there's no question you're going to have to go with that, right? Two podcasts, maybe more. Your company that you're running, your personal life, you're going to need a little more power than what that Air can give you. So I think it's no question you're going to have to go with the new Pro. I think even if you say, okay, I want to wait for the iPad next year, you're still waiting for next year, one, which means you're going to be stuck on that bad battery that you have now if you don't get it fixed, which I doubt you have any interest on getting that battery replaced. You're going to be waiting till new iPads, and then what if that's not the iPad that you want? What if it's just not enough? What if it doesn't have the new features we want? So we'll know at the end of the month, whatever Pro that comes out, we know it's going to be awesome, right?
Yeah.
So I think it just moved up your timeline. I think, without a doubt, you're going to have to go with this new Pro.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I'd love to see if anybody that's listening has some thoughts about this. I mean, more power is always good, in my opinion,
Right,
right? And the more you and I get into video, and one of my
right,
concerns is I think one of us probably has to have a Mac to
right.
do the podcast the way we want it, right? I mean, I got thinking about I could do the Zoom on my phone like you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would still record to the cloud just like it is. So we would get those segments and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we could probably use Ferrite on the iPad. But I just don't know. I mean, ideally, what I want is for this Mac to last long enough for that iPad to come out. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. And the more I've been reading and listening to people talk about the M2 chip, it's so much more power hungry than the M1. That's why you're having problems with battery life
Yeah.
on your iPad Pro, which doesn't solve my current predicament.
Yeah.
So ideally, I'd like this Mac to last long enough. I'd like to be able to do 98% of my job on the new iPad Pro when it comes out, including recording this podcast.
Yeah.
Because if I could do that, then this machine is only when I really need to do something massive, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then usually it's going to be plugged into power. I mean, let's be honest there. If I'm doing that kind of stuff, it's
Yeah.
going to be plugged into power, but it never leaves my desk, essentially. And I thought about, I could go get a Mac Mini and then I could get an app and I could remote into the Mac Mini. But then if I want to do that when I'm at a campground, that means that I have to punch a hole in my home network. And I just don't want things to be that
Right.
complicated, right? I mean, that is right now, Mac OS is not complicated as a whole, but maintaining my comfort level with security and not having malware and all of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff on the Mac, it's just more work than an iPad, right? And
Yeah.
I want and maybe there's some hardware that I have to buy now that we can put more things in the USB-C port on iPads, right? Maybe there's a audio controller that I need to put in like some of the podcasters do versus just connecting straight into the computer and letting GarageBand do all the work, right? I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
some of that kind of stuff that I need to look into. I honestly don't want a Mac. And
Right.
so that also factors into this decision when I start looking at paying $2,000 for a Mac that I don't want,
Mm-hmm.
and then another $2,000 for the iPad that I do want, just because I got to buy the Mac, just because there's that 5% of stuff that
Right.
either I can't do on the iPad or becomes so convoluted on the iPad that it's hard to do. And I'm not like a Federico Viticci, right? That can afford to go take 6 months and just experiment with things.
Right.
I don't have the patience to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's his whole business, right? MacStories.net, that's his thing. It's all about that kind of stuff. But I have this whole other consulting business that I
Right.
can't interrupt. Now, that business, honestly, I could do all of it on an iPad, right? It's,
You think so?
yeah,
The
yeah. I
meetings
mean,
and everything?
yeah, I don't think that's a problem at all. I mean, most of my clients, we don't do video. Nobody wants to be on video for hours at a time, right?
Right. Right.
And so it's mostly in spreadsheets and apps that are already in Safari on the Mac, which will work just fine in Safari on the iPad Pro, right? Like I said, I
Mm-hmm.
upgraded to Sonoma because I don't have anything special on here. I'm using
Right.
Apple apps and Office's stuff, right?
Yeah.
Microsoft
Yeah.
Office. And so, yeah, I know I could do all of that stuff on there. Honestly, if that's all I was doing, I think it would be an easier decision, but it's this podcast, not even my Leaders Lift podcast, because that's just me, right? And I could just turn
Right.
my iPhone on and record and plug this microphone straight into the phone
Right.
and call it good, right? But I just don't know, especially the more we get into video, if I'm going to
Right.
do that. And then, when I look at the MacBooks, you're like, you're probably going to need to go with the new one. Well, odds are the new one that's heftier and beefier because the current MacBook Pro 13-inch that has the touch bar,
Mm-hmm.
it's not great. right? I mean,
Right.
it's not liquid retina display, it's just retina. So the MacBook Air is better than the
Right.
MacBook Pro 13-inch. But then I'm going to give up the touch bar. Okay, I'll have to figure out keyboard shortcuts to do those few things
Right.
that I want to do, right? But I didn't even go in and price the 14-inch because you're looking at the M2 Pro or the M2 Max chip. So, maybe
Hmm.
I should go in and do that. Let's see. So, a MacBook Pro 14-inch with just the Pro chip. We'll just go with the Pro.
Hmm.
Because I don't need to go anywhere beyond that. I mean, you're starting at $2,000.
Yeah.
That's before I go in. That's
Wow.
only 16 gigs of memory and 512. So let me select that one.
Okay. Well, I don't know what 13-inch. I thought it was starting more around the $1,500 mark,
Well,
but
that's the 13 old one. This is now it's 14 and 16. It's not 13 and 15 for the high ends anymore.
right,
All right,
right.
so there's the M2 Pro, 10 core CPU, so more powerful, blah blah blah. But that's all just fine and dandy. I don't need to upgrade
Yeah.
that. 32 gigabytes of memory. I would want more
Hmm.
memory, and I want the
Yeah.
terabyte of
You would need more
storage,
too.
so I don't have to worry about this.
Yeah.
I am now up to before Apple Care. I'm up to $2,600. So Apple Care is probably another
Yeah.
$300. So I'm
Yeah.
up to a $3,000 laptop.
That you don't want to use in the
Uh,
first place.
yeah.
So I mean, I understand. I understand completely. But again, what if the iPad is not what we're expecting it to be? Right? Because rumors are just that. They're just rumors. We know it's going to be better than the M2 iPad, but is it going to have all of those features, right? We were talking about maybe it's going to have more features for podcasters and video creators and stuff like that to be able to add more external devices. Maybe it'll support more external devices and stuff like that, but we just don't know,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
And
that's
you'll
why
be
my
waiting months
yeah, that's why
when,
my ideal scenario is that this laptop quits crapping out on me, right?
right?
And that it can wait until they announce. Because I also heard today that their Jason Snell on Upgrade said he wouldn't be surprised if the iPad Pros don't come in the spring, that they come later because they got to have the M3
This
chip,
summer, right?
right? And so they're not going to announce the M3 chip and put it in the iPads before they put it in
Right.
something else, right? And so I just don't know if I can wait that long
Right.
on this and still maintain the whole reason that I'm independent to start with is flexibility, work whenever, wherever I want, which is
Right.
starting to get hampered by this. Ideally, if I could do everything but record this podcast, if the 2 hours that we take to record this podcast had to be done on a Mac,
Hmm.
right? But I could do all the editing and everything else on the iPad. That would be enough. And then maybe I would say, okay, I'm just going to get a Mac Mini. I'll figure out how to punch the hole in the network, VPN,
Right.
whatever the case may be, secure
Right.
authentication in to just record this podcast. I just don't know. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
and Mac OS is great. I mean, all the functionalities there.
Hmm.
I could, in theory, do my job and never buy anything that was not Apple. I could get rid of my Microsoft subscription, all that kind of stuff. I just do it because that's
Right.
what I'm comfortable with. So Mac OS will allow me to do all of my job.
Right.
No problem
Both
whatsoever.
jobs.
Yeah. I don't like to deal with it.
Yeah.
The sync issues, maybe if they stabilize stuff, I won't be as frustrated. But the sync issues, the fact that I have to log out of my iCloud account like once every 3 or 4 months, all of
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. And then I'm on an Intel, so when I go to the Apple Silicon, it'll be better from a battery life standpoint and a performance
Yeah.
standpoint. But I want to go back. I loved when I was at Stewart and all I had was a 12.9-inch iPad. It connected
Hmm.
to a monitor, and this was before it really worked connecting to monitors, right? And
Right.
I couldn't use a
Right.
mouse, and I couldn't do dual displays, and no stage manager, and none of that kind of stuff. I loved it, and I just had this little icon that I clicked on when I needed to go into our Windows, right?
Right.
And it just connected into the Windows server that somebody had made. By the way, it was a server. It wasn't just a computer that I was
Yeah, it
connecting
wasn't
to,
a
right?
computer. Yeah.
It was a server, so I had no problems with performance connecting in there. But Jason also mentioned it'd be really nice if we could virtualize Mac OS on an iPad.
Yeah.
Sign me up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah. That
think,
would that would be a huge. That way we can do the things that require the desktop level OS, but still keep our iPads.
yep.
Just for the one job or the one or two tasks that you need to do on a Mac. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So, Jason, it didn't help. This conversation didn't help at all. So,
I thought it would, but we'll know when they make the announcement how great the new Mac is going to be. You may have to go with it. I
yeah.
think.
I mean, I didn't think you were going to tell me that. I think you were going to say, no, 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 you'll be fine with the MacBook Air, or go with if you really want the touch bar, go with the 13-inch, which is kind of in this weird state right now. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Right.
And hopefully this Mac will hold out long enough for me to get an idea of what's coming. And the other thing is, if I get a Vision Pro, the ability to put your Mac right to
Right.
basically AirPlay your Mac to the Vision Pro is there too. So I don't see getting to where I can't have a Mac in my life as much as
Hmm.
I don't want to have one. I just got to figure out the best solution for it. And I
Right.
don't know how you do that right now with the lineups the way they are.
Yeah. And just going by rumors too. You
Yeah.
can't make any decision based on rumors because Apple, no matter what rumors, what parts leak, I said this before, nothing's set in stone until someone stands on that stage at the keynote and says, this is what's coming. And it'll be available on this date. If they don't do that, rumors are just that, just rumors. So it's hard to make long-term plans based on rumors. Now some guys have a good track record. Gurman has a good track record when it comes
Yeah.
to rumors and stuff like that, but still, even he doesn't know until Tim Cook or someone on the team stands on the stage and says, "This is that."
Well, I think that's it. Jason did not lower my blood pressure today. So, but yeah, I mean, hold off. We told people to hold off on buying iPads. I think that's out the window now. If you need an iPad now, you need to buy one. And I don't even know what one to tell you to buy. Unless you know you
Right.
need the big Pro, that's the only one that's obvious. Or you know you need the cheapest one, then you go with that. But once you get in between, it probably is just your budget. What is your budget? How much money do
Right.
you have to spend, and will it do what you want? Which most of them will. So yeah, I think that hold off on buying iPads is out the door because everything indicates that there aren't going to be any new iPads this year. Maybe hold off until this
Right.
event on October 30th in case they
Right.
sneak
Let's
one
see
in
what's
there.
coming.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you need a new Mac, I wouldn't buy it now. And one of the reasons Gurman says it's coming is because you can't get a lot of the Macs until mid-November now anyway. So that's how
Okay, they're
far out
pushing them out.
the shipping dates
Okay.
are. So,
That's usually a good indication on
yep.
something new is coming.
All right. So I hope something was useful there. You see the struggles that we're going through. We'll do some more. Jason's struggling with his network. I'm struggling with my computer. So
Right.
we'll resolve these over the next month. Until then, don't forget to do all the things like, subscribe, share, check out the videos. We'll put out a couple of videos. I'll put out the video on the crack on my screen protector. And when I peeled that off, makes a really cool sound when you peel it off, by the way. Hopefully the microphone captured it. But do all those things. Let us know what you liked. If you have suggestions on the MacBook, I'd love to hear them because I don't know. I don't think I would be able to wait even until March. So we'll see how that goes. And until then, I'll just say thanks for listening. Jason, what have you got to close us out?
I'll see you at the river behind your house,
Oh
in
yeah.
your backyard.
Check out the river on our Instagram account. I threw that up there. So thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for sticking around for the post show today. We've got 3 topics. I think they'll go pretty quickly. Folding
Yep.
phones, tracking people, and moving everything into keychain and iCloud passwords. I wanted to just get Jason's take on what I think I'm going to be doing here. So let's start with folding phones. Now, Apple has not made a folding phone, but there are plenty of Android phones out there in all kinds of form
Mhm.
factors, right? And MKBHD dropped a video on one of the latest ones. It was a really slick looking foldable phone. And when it was open, it seems like it's about the size of my iPad mini. And then when you
Right.
fold it closed, right, it's just a thicker phone, but it had that outside screen. So it was about the size of an iPhone 15 Pro Max. And
Hmm.
that got me thinking, what do I want? And then today, or this week, I was listening to another podcast and they talked about a rumor that Apple decided to work on a folding iPad first before they work on a folding phone. And the hosts on that show were actually in favor of the iPad, but I think I fall into I think I want the folding iPhone before I want the folding iPad. So,
Right.
Jason, what are your thoughts on foldable devices?
So it's still to me seems more gimmicky than it is functional, right? I just don't see a need for that for most people, right? When you fold the phone or the device, so are they tablets or I guess they're still considered phones, right? You fold it and it's kind of a mini tablet, but it's still a phone. It is too thick of a phone, right? To get those two halves that fold together. So if you use it in phone mode, I mean, it is a pretty big brick, right? The few that I've seen, right? Samsung has the Z Fold or something like that. And I think LG has one. I maybe getting the companies mixed up, but so in its phone mode, I think it's inconvenient to use, right? Because it's so thick, the halves are folding. I don't know if they lock into place. I just hadn't played around with it so much. And then you say, okay, that's the one mode. But then when you fold it open to use it in tablet mode, it's just a tiny tablet, right? So it's too small. Now, again, not everybody needs a 12.9 inch iPad, but it's smaller than even most of the current ones are smaller than the iPad mini, right? So you get two half efforts in phone mode and in tablet mode that I just don't see it there yet. It's probably too soon for me, right? Everybody that's early adopters, they're all just beta testers and that same old rant that we don't like to hear from people. But uh, yeah, I think it's just too gimmicky for me right now. What about you?
So, I mean, think of my use case, right? I love my iPad mini because I
Right,
read a ton. So if it would fold open to the size of an iPad mini, that's one less device
right,
that I have to worry about, right? And when it comes to the thickness, definitely they get thicker, but you know me, I worry about these phones getting so thin that I'm going to
yeah,
destroy them, right? That they're never going to last the way I use stuff. I mean, I can't imagine uh, a credit card that, that's extreme, right? A credit
right,
card thick phone having hit the tile,
right, right, and
right?
not disintegrating,
Yeah,
right,
exactly. So I think I'm in favor of that. Definitely more so than the folding iPad. I mean, I don't see a need to have an 11-inch iPad that I can unfold and now it's
Mhm.
a 13 or a 14-inch iPad. That's not my use case. I mean, people talk about I don't travel a whole lot, right? And so
Right.
maybe people that travel would want something like that. Um, but I do like the idea of even if I put the camera bump aside, right? If I put two
Mhm.
iPhone 15 Pro Maxes on top of each other, I don't feel like that would be too thick or too heavy for me,
Right.
but maybe. I don't know. I think that would be great. And again, it solves my particular use case issue.
Right. Right. And I just don't think with all of these years of just having that one black sliver of glass, everyone's integrated using phones into their lives. I just don't see how adding an extra phone and folding it will make a huge difference. Now, there's some people that would like it, right? There's tons of tech nerds that would love to have technology like that years ago. People wanted, oh, remember the modular phone years ago where you can one company, I can't remember the name of the company, but they were working on, oh, you could just have this phone or you can just upgrade your camera the next year if you want to just purchase the camera, if you just wanted to purchase more RAM and it was modular. We thought that was the way it was going to go. But it seems like people just wanted you to just hand them a device and it just works. I don't
Yeah.
know. It may be it's something cool to have, but it just seemed like two half measures, right? You have a not so good tablet and a not so good phone, both of those devices to me. That's just my opinion.
And maybe that's why they haven't taken off beyond
Right,
kind of the geeks, right? That one of the Samsung was a flip fold that was basically folded down like a flip phone, and then when you
right,
opened it up, it was like a phone. But that's phone, not phone tablet, right?
right,
And that's not what I
right,
would want. I would want phone tablet. And then I guess the other outstanding question is, will Apple figure out a way to do it that more people will want it,
right.
right?
Because we,
And
we always say is when Apple does it, that's when it's time, right?
yeah,
We're talking about the Vision Pro. There's been sorts of VR and AR headsets or whatever, but now that Apple's entered the game, same with watches. There were fitness bands, there were watches, smart watches, and things like that. But when Apple entered the game, when they stepped on the field, they made it more useful to everyone, right?
yeah.
So it may be the same. When Apple gets around making a foldable tablet, it may be better than what we would expect from a device like that. So
And then maybe the other market that this starts to address is, which is something that's come up a little bit more than I expected it to, especially here in the US, but this is the market where people only have one computer, and
right,
it's their phone, right? I mean, you and I live in
right,
this world where that would never work for us, but a lot of people, that's all they have. And if I think of like a teenager, like my grandkids coming up in 5 years wanting a phone or something like that, right? If they wanted that, but they still wanted to be able to watch shows and
hmm
do some of those other kinds of things, would that be okay? And if it is your only computer, right? But I can fold it
hmm
out to a iPad mini size and I can connect a keyboard or whatever to it and do a few things that I need to do,
right,
right? Does that make more sense? So I guess we'll see.
yeah,
Let's talk about, so, maybe we go on our remind people that we don't try and tell people how to parent. We
right,
won't go into that on detail, right? But I was actually a little bit shocked this article that came out, and this was it's on 9 to 5 Mac. There will be a link in the show notes, but I think it's Life 360 that sponsored this study. But Life 360 is an app similar to Find My. There's some other features
yes,
that have to it. Now, I used to be a big proponent of Life 360 and pushed it a lot. And then they had some privacy issues where the tracking information wasn't quite as private. I'm assuming that they've fixed it because in the article it talks about how many tens of millions of users in the US and how many tens of millions of users they have internationally using
right,
it. But putting that aside, um, I saw this article and then I thought back to the fact that all three of the four of my adult kids that are on iPhones,
hmm
Alyssa's not, so that's fine. But the other three they've allowed some level of tracking,
right,
and they're all adults. Two of them are at college, and now I don't. My one daughter that's here, my wife can see her location. That's how they've shared that. And
yeah,
but the other two, um, they've just. I told them you guys can turn this off anytime you want. And they're like, no, 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 it's fine.
right.
And so I read this article and I thought, okay, well, maybe this is part of it. So, did you read this article? What do you think?
So I didn't get to finish it, but when you sent it to me, it just reminded me of a few different situations, right? How often I see this. So there's a couple of young ladies that work for us, right? They contract with the companies, and again, we work outside, downtown, different events, parties, festivals, stuff like that. So um, I thought it was just me and my family because my kids they don't have a problem with being tracked, and like you told me several times that your kids they don't have a problem with it. They won't turn it off even though they have the ability to. So one of the young ladies that works, she's 21. Um, her and her sister and her mom, they all track each other. And I remember this because after the event and we were getting towards the end, I'm like, hey, is your mom going to come pick you up? You're off at like 9 o'clock or whatever. She's like, yeah, yeah, I tracked her and she's on the way to get me. And I'm like, okay, you guys track each other. She's like, oh yeah, yeah, we do that all the time. I want her to know my location all the time. So that was a previous thing. So we fast forward to this past Saturday. I was training the new young lady, and she's younger. She's a teenager. The same thing. Hey, your shift ends at 10. Is your dad coming to get you? She said, I don't know. She pulled out her phone and she tracked him. And she's like, oh yeah, he's exited here. He's about 8 minutes away, I think was the exact time. So I'm like, that's cool that these teenagers are taking advantage of this technology. All the way up to we walked into the house last night. No, I'm sorry. This was Sunday. Me and my wife, we went to dinner after our market. We came in, and my daughter, who just got her iPad back, says, I knew you guys were coming because I tracked you. This is my 7 year old. I knew you guys were coming because I tracked y'all and I saw that mom was coming down the street. So yeah, I think this technology has grown beyond, just a controlling parent or a controlling person, in a relationship, just trying to, you know what I mean, assert that control over somebody. And it's more of a safety slash convenience slash, just timing thing. You mentioned before, like, when to text your son because you'll see he'll show up on the map if he's in a certain hall, in a certain lecture hall or something. Okay, I'm not going to message him now because I know he's busy or he's practicing, his music or something. So yeah, to see more people taking advantage of this technology, man, I love it. I love it. It's a wonderful thing.
Now, not everybody's going to like it, and that's fine. But I thought one of
Right,
the interesting things in the article was that the vast majority, and they were doing Gen Z, right? And don't
right,
get me started on which gen is which, um, but things like long distance driving, visiting new or dangerous places, going to
right.
an event, concert, or festival, and when they're going to a party or on a date, right? And a huge number, and I don't think this is a surprise, of women feel like that is a safety feature
Yeah,
and that their physical well-being benefits from that. And now they've grown up with this. I mean, like with my kids knew, you want a phone, there's no privacy, right? Dad can
right,
track you, he can get into the
right.
phone anytime, all that kind of stuff. But even for parents that don't do that, I think there's still a psychological thing here. And I thought it was interesting. Like I said, we'll put the link to this in here, but the quote from a psychologist said that anxiety plays a key role in this. And this is just one way to feel safe, right? And
Hmm.
I've noticed that with our kids and with uh, younger generations too, that it just seems like mental health issues are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. There's more to worry
Right.
about. There's more to be anxious about. And so using technology, if we can use it in a way that takes away some of that anxiety, like turning off notifications, that fear of missing out, or putting limits on how much time we spend on social media, which can have a negative impact on your mental health, or
Yep.
something like this where saying I'm comfortable that you know where I am all the
Right.
time. And then the new check-in feature, and Life 360 had an emergency thing that you just basically hit a button and it would tell your contacts there was an emergency or stuff like that. And Apple, you can do
Right.
that by
What
squeezing
what's up?
the buttons on the phone. But
Right.
so I think this is super interesting that um, we live in a world where privacy is such a big deal, where us having control over our privacy is what we really want, right? We
Right.
want to be able to expose what information we want to those that we want to have it. And we don't want the government or anybody else snooping in on all of our kind of stuff. And then I think it's funny because most people throw that away because they do a ton of stuff on Facebook. Have a nice day
Right.
having your privacy. So,
Right, right. I don't want the government tracking me. And then they check in somewhere on their Facebook. They'll let
yeah.
everyone know where they're at. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, really good. I love to see people using this technology for you know just safety and just togetherness, convenience, just all of these different uses to be able to track, just to know, and it's weird. The three cases that I gave were all the children tracking the parents,
Yeah.
but still that same vice versa, just being able to know what everyone is, everyone should be where they should be at the time, and just it makes you feel safe and secure. So I love it.
All right. So I want to run some logic by you. So I use LastPass as my
Yep.
password manager.
Which is another thing, like the calculator you use and the calendar you
Yep.
use. Why are you using LastPass?
Well, so when I worked at my last job, I had a Mac
Hmm.
and I wanted to be able to put certain things, and we were allowed to do that on there. But if I signed in with my Apple ID on the work Mac, then it pulled my keychain onto
Right,
my work Mac, which I
right,
didn't
right,
want. Right. And
right.
so I decided to go out and got LastPass. We got a family thing. It actually was super useful because my mom, I had given her an account because I had a family one. So I had enough
Hmm.
spots. So she put her passwords in LastPass and had some shared
Right,
stuff. So that made it super easy when she passed.
right.
Um,
Benefited you a lot, right?
yeah.
Having access to that.
Yep. But LastPass has had some struggles. I absolutely do not like how it works on the
Hmm.
Mac. I can't quite figure out how to manage it the way I want. So it's either less secure than I want it or way too secure,
Hmm.
right? And now Apple has added the ability to do shared passwords in Keychain,
Yes.
and you can do biometric stuff. The what are they called? KeyPass, whatever it is. The thing where instead of putting your password on certain websites, you just authenticate on your phone and it logs you in.
Right.
Passkeys,
Yeah.
not KeyPass, passkeys. And so it's just one more expense and one more app for me to manage. So I'm thinking about moving everything back into Keychain. Now, I'll have to get Karen and Wyatt and Dustin, and I'll have to migrate all of my mom's stuff because it's still in there, right?
Hmm.
I need to get all of that stuff migrated over. But the other day I was in the settings doing something for my grandma and realized that I could turn on Keychain and LastPass at the same time. So it'll pre-fill from either of those platforms.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, well, that's fine. But then what I didn't realize is when I turned that on, every time I started to enter a password that was not in Keychain, it started asking me if I wanted to add it to Keychain. Because one of the problems with migrating password managers is getting all 250 or whatever it is entries
Right.
that I have in the
Right.
password manager over to the new one.
Right.
But if I turn that on now, I think my subscription for LastPass is in November. If I were to turn that on now, maybe I'll capture 50% of all of that stuff automatically
Hmm.
because I just fill it from LastPass and then Keychain's going to say, "Hey, do you want us to save that?" And I say yes. And then the
Right.
next time it'll fill it from Keychain. So, yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do because I really don't want to keep paying for LastPass. I mean, they had a couple of breaches,
Hmm.
and the problem with the breaches were that your passwords themselves were encrypted, but sometimes the notes and stuff you put in
Right.
weren't.
Right.
So, do you just use Keychain or do you use something else?
Just use keychain. Always only use keychain. And when I went to use LastPass before, it was after one of the breaches. And I saw that I'm like, well, these people are housing some of the most sensitive, data, which are your passwords to everything. Didn't even go down that road. Didn't bother with it. That bad press was enough for me. Um, Keychain has improved a lot over the last few years, and yeah, it's to the point now that why would you use anything else? Now I know the whole migration thing. You just reminded me now. I just realized now they don't have an import feature where you can import, a
Yeah.
list of passwords and things like that into. There may be something that they'll add in the future because they're continually improving it. But yeah, now with the ability to share with your family members and choosing which, passwords and accounts that you want to share. I even saw the other day, like third-party browsers like Chrome can now access, save data and stuff like that. So, which was usually a problem. I don't save anything in Chrome. Actually, whenever it asks me if I want to save a password, I
Yeah.
tell it
No.
no, never for this site. I don't want that information with Google. But now if it can stay with Apple or inside of iOS on the device and still access it in that browser, then yeah, it's only improving. So yeah, I would recommend 100% jump back to it, use it full time. Now, I hadn't had this situation like you where I had to have a corporate identity and then try to share, my personal passwords and stuff too, I would have made the same choice as you. I wouldn't want to mix those two, but now that you don't have that,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm all in on the Apple ecosystem. So yeah,
right,
I think I'll make this switch and hopefully I can get it done and not pay another year's worth of subscription on LastPass. It just and you
right,
could do two-factor codes and everything right in Keychain now. So
right,
maybe that'll eliminate the fact that I have three different two-factor apps working on me
right.
right now. So
That's pretty secure. But no, yeah, ditch the LastPass. I mean, I'm sure it's a great service. Again, the if all you're supposed to do is protect people passwords, and you still had a security breach, you only had
yeah,
one job. You
yep.
ruined that for me. So I leave everything on the devices or in my iCloud. I hadn't had any problems, with not retrieving any passwords or losing any data, something like that. So yeah, I think that's a good move.
All right. Well, that's all I got for today, Jason. You got anything else?
No, no, that was all.
I think we shaved 5 to 10 minutes off of our record time this week. So
It's a
hey,
start.
progress, right?
Next week will be even quicker, I think.
Yep.
Probably not, but
All right. Thanks for everybody for sticking with us. Have a great one.
all right. Thanks, folks. Bye.